I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Hey, where are the white women at?
Let's all that gold talk! We're a one-eyed fat man!
And welcome to a new episode of the Containment Unit. I'm Tony. And that blank there is where my co-host and my wife would usually chime in. But she's on vacation right now. She's taking our girls out to Texas. I went with them. It's not like she just left. So we all went out to Wichita Falls, Texas to visit in-laws. I couldn't take a full month off. So I came back, and in the meantime, I wanted to record, and I'm thinking, how can we record? And slapped myself upside the head and said, you know what? Jack and I have been talking about recording for a couple years now. So Skyping in, I've got my best friend for 20 years now.
Jesus, we're old.
God, man, just looking at the gray in my beard and in my hair and then saying that we've been friends for 20 years. Yeah, I'm feeling old. So, Jack, how you doing, man?
Doing well. For any listeners out there, I am a Texan living in New Hampshire, so it's weird.
So a rebel living with the Yankees?
Yeah, more than you know.
And we have to say that, though, because you don't sound like a Texan.
Well, I would blame 20 plus years of theater that beats that the hell out of me. But I promise you, it comes out. It comes out.
Yeah, and we're both kind of having some libations, and it may be coming out a little bit later. So for today, a mutual passion that we both have, one of many, is Westerns. And I've kind of always been into Westerns, more so, honestly, after you and I became friends and I started watching more and more of them. But where did the love of Westerns start for you?
Well, I'd originally have to say probably my grandfather. He, whenever I'd go over to their house, there wasn't a day that I think I went over that he didn't have a Western on. I can't even remember the channels it was back in the day. Nowadays it would be like the Family Channel or the Encore Channel or something, but he used to always have a Western on. It could be Bonanza, it could be John Wayne, you name it, it was on. And on his walls, he would have guns and holsters and all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know if it was true, but he says that he had a gun that was hanging on his wall that he swore belonged to the little kid from Shane.
Okay.
The little cross-eyed, blonde-haired kid that at the end of the movie is going, "Shane, come back!" He swore that was the rifle that belonged to that kid. So that's
would
probably where it
definitely
started.
Be a good artifact to have if it could be verified.
Yeah, it is tricky, right? Do you want to go get that verified and then ruin the thought that it was, and all of a sudden the whole family's pissed at you?
Yeah, ignorance is bliss in this case.
So how about you? Where did your love of Westerns start?
Oh, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, except for it was my dad that always had Westerns on. I grew up with John Wayne movies on TV all the time, Clint Eastwood movies definitely, and I never really got into the John Wayne movies apart from Rio Lobo. That's one that I'll watch regularly to this day, and that's considered one of his worst films, and it's actually my favorite. But I remember the movie that really kind of triggered it for me was Young Guns, because it made cowboys and the Western cool for kids of the 80s, and we're definitely both kids of the 80s, so that's where it really kind of started for me. And then there was a little bit of a lull because there was no mainstream Westerns that came out, and then kind of everybody in the world got slapped in the face in, what was it, like 94 with Tombstone.
Yes. Of course.
And then since then, I watch westerns when I can, and I'm not somebody that will watch every single western I can get, because there's just some that I look at and I go, yeah, I'm not. I'm sorry, I don't need to see aging Val Kilmer playing Wyatt Earp and The Legend of Wyatt Earp,
we'll
or
get
whatever
to that
movie is.
It was Wyatt Earp's Revenge, and I watched it. I shit you not.
Oh, you have my sympathies. I just saw a trailer for it, and I just went, Val Kilmer, how the mighty have fallen.
It was. I made a list before we started this, and I made the list, ironically, I called it the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Wyatt Earp's Revenge is in the ugly.
Not surprised. Not surprised in the least. Now, something about westerns, it seems like, over the past, say, 15, 20 years, basically since Tombstone hit big, it's kind of safe to say that was the last big mainstream western. We really haven't had anything that reached widespread popularity since. We have a few, like 3:10 to Yuma and stuff that comes out that it kind of hovers in popularity, but it doesn't have the lasting effects. Do you think westerns is kind of a lost appreciation in today's pop culture?
I think it. Well, I think it comes and goes. Obviously, especially in this day and age, with the whole revisionist westerns, those are a big thing. Obviously, because as much as you can love a John Wayne western, they are very. They push the myth that was started, in Hollywood back in the 1920s. The big, tall, white, blonde-haired, cowboy that's got to defeat the savages or the whatever. That myth has been pushed in so many movies, or the lone gunman that's got to take down all the bad guys. And you're right. I mean, I think aside from Tombstone, I think the only thing that's close would be Deadwood,
Yes.
which isn't a movie; it's a TV show.
Well, it just wrapped up with a movie, but
Right. So there you go. It counts.
okay.
And Deadwood did challenge, but again, I think the good thing about the few good westerns we do get in this current era is when they are good, they challenge the concept of those old westerns while still, oddly enough, paying homage to them.
So it's kind of like giving a more accurate portrayal of what the Old West was, where it wasn't a cowboy, the white hats versus the black hats. It wasn't a good guy running through and taking down the bad guy for the safety of the town. Hell, Wyatt Earp is a perfect example of that. He's not a hero. When you look at Wyatt Earp, he's not a great guy.
Oh, God, no. Especially now that you get past Stuart Lake's horrific biography, Frontier Marshal. Once you realize he's not that squeaky clean character, even Tombstone, they did still portray him as not necessarily the perfect, cowboy, the perfect, Western lawman. Although they did cut out the scene where they did have a deleted scene where he and Josephine had a little thing out in the forest, and they cut
which
that.
you can get a hint of in the trailer.
Yes, it's still in the trailer, which I always found hilarious. But in the movie, you don't get that, and you just get a scene where he looks very guilty with his big mustache, looking like they purposely turned it into a frown.
Yeah, and it's not even in the director's cut, the Vista series director's cut. They don't even plug it back in there.
Oh, that's horrible. See, they keep saying, obviously the myth, or I guess it's been confirmed that Kurt Russell directed it.
Yes.
And they've always said that Kurt Russell will eventually one day make a definitive cut. But are we ever going to see that?
I don't. He has all the negatives. And you know what? We're talking about Tombstone. Let's just kind of just jump into discussion of individual movies with Tombstone. Where does that rank for you in terms of not only your favorite westerns, but just westerns in general?
Tombstone. I mean, God, it is essentially what the Godfather of westerns.
I would say so. Yeah.
What? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's been tons of great westerns before Tombstone, but Tombstone really, like you said, it came out of nowhere. Westerns weren't a big thing in the early 90s. I mean, aside from Young Guns, which, what do you think? Young Guns could probably be seen as the MTV westerns, right? You know, they had the
very
music
much,
video.
It's the MTV Brat Pack influence in pop culture that you had to kind of make history, basically sexy. You know, Emilio Estevez playing Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was not a heartthrob. He was one awkward-looking kid.
He was. And they say that Emilio Estevez, if you put all his movies together, he's still actually one of the most top-earning actors in Hollywood, I think. Price for dollar, including inflation.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. With everything that he did in the 80s as part of the Brat Pack and later on, definitely successful. And I think Young Guns really did kind of influence the style for Tombstone, because Tombstone was competing with Wyatt Earp. They knew that film was being made because Costner was possibly going to be in Tombstone, and he's like, no, I'm Kevin Costner, I'm an arrogant asshole, and I want full control, and he left.
He did with Lawrence Kasdan, the director of Wyatt Earp, who was also the writer of Raiders of the Lost Ark, oddly enough. You think he would have written a better movie?
Oh God, that Wyatt Earp has its moments, but by itself, but also more so in comparison to Tombstone, it is boring as shit.
It is, to me, the only favorite part I have about Wyatt Earp, and I guess we'll have to swing back to Tombstone, is Dennis Quaid.
Oh yeah,
Dennis Quaid is it's like if you took Val Kilmer and you took Dennis Quaid, you would have the real Doc Holliday if you put both of them together.
Yes. Yeah, there is no denying that before those two actors, nobody got Doc Holliday right. And both of them, they finally added in the Southern accent, which Doc Holliday's from Georgia. Why did it take all these years to finally cop a Southern accent in the portrayal?
Yeah, I mean, you had, oh God, what was his name? I can't even remember now. He was Lauren Bacall's ex-husband. Anyways, he played Doc Holliday. He did a good version in the James Garner. Oh God, I can't remember it now. Anyways.
Oh, not Spartacus. No, what's his face?
No. Kirk Douglas played Doc Holliday in Gunfight at the OK Corral, and he was good. He was fine. But no,
he was definitely Kirk Douglas playing Kirk Douglas in a Kirk Douglas movie.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk Douglas can't play anybody except Kirk Douglas.
Now, when you look at Wyatt Earp, though, as boring as it was, I do have to give it credit for, let's say, a more accurate portrayal of Wyatt Earp. As great as Kurt Russell was, he kind of made Wyatt Earp more likable and more moral in many ways. Mm-hmm. Definitely, you know, like you mentioned, they were intending to include his infidelity. But overall, what the real Wyatt Earp did is more representative of Kevin Costner's portrayal of just kind of a arrogant dip, as opposed to the hero that Kurt Russell's was. You know, what we know, I should say, what pop culture knew of Wyatt Earp for decades came from Wyatt Earp. Came from after everything was said and done in his life. He's living out in California and tells his story to a screenwriter and makes himself look great. He was not a good guy.
He was not, but now I don't know to the extent, but a good portion of that can be accredited to Josephine. Apparently she would take Stuart Lake aside and correct and say, hey, I don't want that stuff in there. I don't want them knowing about that, about him or me. And thanks to her, even the bad parts, apparently she decided to scrub squeaky clean.
Yeah.
Which I agree with you about Wyatt Earp. Although I feel like Lawrence Kasdan read Stuart Lake's biography and decided, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going with that. Because there's so much in that movie that I feel like I'm watching like Stuart Lake's version. Now, sometimes.
Kind of explain what about Stuart Lake's version was so incorrect or just basically wrong about the portrayal.
Well, so it made Wyatt Earp great at everything. You know, he worked hauling buffalo and shooting buffalo, and apparently he was amazing at it. When historically there's no record that he actually did that. You and I both know Wyatt Earp worked at brothels and was probably a pimp, but possibly just a bodyguard for prostitutes. That's nowhere mentioned in the Stuart Lake biography.
No. Wyatt Earp was arrested several times for the charge of living at a brothel. That was illegal back in the day, and he had many counts of that on his record.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you?
It's the West. What else did you have to do? Just drink, play cards, and carouse with showgirls.
And occasionally kill people.
Now, with Wyatt Earp and Tombstone, I feel like even though Kurt Russell's performance was the hero, Kevin Costner's was more rough and gruff, they definitely kind of cleansed the image of Wyatt Earp and basically what his role was leading up to the gunfight at the OK Corral. And I don't think it's ever really been covered in movies that basically the gunfight at the OK Corral started because he was in cahoots with Ike Clanton. Ike was ratting out some cowboys, and Ike was paranoid that Wyatt was going to say, yeah, he's a rat. And I don't think that's ever been covered, and I think that's fascinating. I would have loved to have seen that in Tombstone.
It is fascinating, and I think, so in order to do that, you would have to go into the whole shebang. I mean, the tensions had been building up for over a year between the Earps and the Clantons and the whole cowboy gang. And you're right, the whole Ike thing is hilarious, honestly, because Wyatt Earp said, I'm not going to tell anybody. And Ike just was so paranoid that he couldn't believe him. And he thought, oh, my God, my friends are going to kill me. So I have to do something about that. And you're right, it's never been in a movie. And I think I would like, what if they did a TV show? They could do a TV show called Tombstone and easily go into all those politics and the ins and outs. And I think it could be actually incredible.
Oh, yeah. Everything about the story of the Earps and the Clantons and the whole politics, basically, that surrounded the story in Tombstone cannot be covered in a single film. Like you said, it's got to be a Deadwood-style series. Just maybe even a limited series. 10 episodes. Done.
HBO, are you listening?
Oh, they are. I know for a fact that HBO listens to every single episode, just like IGN for all the shit talking I've been doing about them and their lack of journalistic integrity. But anyway, so we kind of touched on Young Guns earlier. What do you think about Young Guns in the scope of Westerns? Did it taint Westerns in a way by making it a little too rock and roll and a little too MTV?
That's a good question. I like it. I like Young Guns. I like Young Guns too. Ironically, what a lot of people don't realize is the movies are oddly kind of close to. I mean, I'm not a huge expert on Billy the Kid. I've been meaning to read some books, but I've read more on Tombstone, obviously. But they are pretty close to the history, aren't they?
For the most part, they are close on actual events, but then they might swap around who was killed in a particular event.
Right.
Like the character of Doc Scurlock actually lived to an old age. He was never killed. But the way that his death is in Young Guns 2 is the way that the actual Charlie Bowdry died. and he was the one killed in Young Guns 1.
Right. In fact, oddly enough, I just read an article about Doc Scurlock in True West, a recent issue, and they talked about that, how they said that Kiefer Sutherland didn't want to film a scene where he left with his family, so they said, oh, fine, we'll just kill you.
Why would he not want to film that?
They didn't go into it. I thought it was very weird, unless Kiefer Sutherland just had some, weird, he was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't know why he wouldn't, but
yeah,
that's what it said in the article.
And True West, I got to give them credit. They really do pay attention to accuracy in their articles, so I'll definitely trust them on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with that.
But with general historical accuracy for Young Guns, like you said, for the most part, they're spot on. John Tunstall, played by General Zod, he was...
Yes,
Terrence Stamp
is
Zod. He's Zod. Any movie he's ever done, it's gonna come down to he was Zod.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Yes,
but John Tunstall was actually in his mid-20s when he was killed. He was not an old man. They kind of just made that for the movie to have that kind of paternal relationship between him and Billy, when in actuality they were closer in ages and it was more like brothers.
Right, and Tombstone does that. Fred White, when he gets shot by Curly Bill, Fred White was apparently in his 30s, and in the movie he looks like he's in his mid-60s.
Oh, man, he looks like he was more like farting dirt, 80 years old. They made him... I don't see how a man that old could be an Old West sheriff.
No, but I think you're right. I think it's the same thing. They say, oh, we know this guy's going to get killed. How do we make the audience really feel it? Let's make him an old man so everyone feels that, oh, that could have been my grandfather.
Oh, yeah. And that's something that you do pretty much in any movie. It's just a little bit more blatant with films that are based on historical situations. Billy the Kid has never been truly accurately portrayed because of the misconceptions about Billy the Kid. For how long did people think he was left-handed?
You're right, the tintype being flipped.
And that's something they even cover in Young Guns. He's reading the book, left-handed. I ain't left-handed. But there's other things that they don't really... They may address in Young Guns, like in Young Guns 2. The whole capper of Young Guns 2 is Brushy Bill Roberts.
Oh, God, I'm so tired of hearing about Brushy Bill.
I'm right there with you.
And
he's not Billy the Kid. I'm sorry. Hyco, Texas, close down the museum. He's not Billy the Kid.
Right. Thanks to Young Guns 2, they've definitely pushed that myth. And I get it. Pico, Texas wants to say, hey, yeah, Brushy Bill, blah, blah, blah. At least add an addendum to their museum that says, hey, he probably wasn't, but it's still kind of fun. Come to our museum.
Yeah. Odds are he wasn't. He was actually born around the time Billy died. He also, at one point, said he was Jesse James. The guy is not the most trustworthy source here.
No, it blows my mind when people still to this day. I'm not kidding. I think about an hour ago I saw on Facebook someone still asked the question, was Brushy Bill Billy? And it blows my mind. We're in the age of information. You can Google that easily.
Yeah, so many History Channel documentaries covered the fact that if you age up the one known picture of Billy the Kid, it does not match Brushy Bill Roberts. Natural aging would not create that face.
But they saw Young Guns too.
Yeah, and that's why, a lot of people say, well, it's just a movie, who cares? Because it is the most consumed art form in the world. People are going to see it, and even if you remind them, this is a work of fiction, if it's based in history, they're going to believe some of it.
Well, yeah. We all still believe that Mel Gibson won the American Revolution. Let's be honest. He did.
No, he did, yeah. And we believe that the British, torched a church, which we have no record of. And oh man.
Oh, and a Southern plantation owner had free slaves because he was Mel Gibson. So,
Yeah,
of course.
oh, exactly. Yeah, no, he was not a slave owner at all. What we're trying to say is The Patriot has the historical accuracy of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Which actually is, oddly enough, an enjoyable movie. And that could that be considered a Western as well?
I hadn't thought about it, but it definitely has the feel of a hero seeking revenge.
And it takes place in various places in the frontier. You've got the Civil War, which also, I mean, yeah.
I think
Vampire
that could
Hunter.
definitely fall into a Western. And that's something that a lot of people, because of the term West and Western, they think it has to take place in California, New Mexico, Nevada, Arizona, maybe even Texas, though. But more Western is just something that took place in the mid to late 1800s. Right,
but even that. Okay, so does the Texas Revolution count as Western history? I mean, I think, Davy Crockett is an Old West type character. Without the Texas Revolution, in theory, we wouldn't have gotten to the Mexican-American War, which then led to all the territories of the Old West. There's so much that plays into the Old West.
Well, hell, John Wayne did a movie about the Alamo. That makes it a Western.
That's true. He did. And I watch it every year. So we were kind of touching on how some movies are kind of loose with historical accuracy. Just to kind of finish up with Young Guns 2, like we said, Bushy Bill Roberts, not Billy the Kid, but it did perpetuate that myth. He does mention that Billy the Kid was credited with killing 21 men, but in the movie they say, I didn't kill that many. Doc probably killed half the guys that Billy got credit for. Ultimately, when you look at the life of Billy the Kid, he killed, or at least had an active role in the killing of maybe 4 guys. His very first one was in self-defense. And that's what brought him to John Tunstall. He was escaping that and trying to get away. Then he was involved in the death of Sheriff Brady, but to this day they cannot confirm if Billy fired a fatal shot. But he was there for it. He was part of it. There's no confirmation of him actively killing anybody there, but because he was this legend already in New Mexico, he's getting credit for deaths from the regulators. And it's not even until around the time that they show in Young Guns 2 where he's arrested and breaks out and he kills Deputy Bell and Bob Ollinger. And I would say Bob Ollinger is the one that we can say, yeah, that was a cold blood. Because that was accurate in Young Guns 2. He didn't use 18 dimes. That's total bullshit. But he did shoot Bob with his own shotgun and said, "Hello, Bob." But he's Billy the Kid.
He's like the way that we romanticize gangsters.
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, wouldn't you say Old West frontier heroes? They were probably all romanticized the exact same way we romanticize Bonnie and Clyde, who didn't deserve that at all. I mean, same thing.
Well, not to get into gangster films, but you look at like the Godfather films, and there's this romanticized image of the mafia of honor among thieves, and that they're really good people who just do bad things. And to use the analogy that I did before, the Godfather has the historical accuracy of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. That's not the mafia, but that's what we look at and that's what we romanticize.
Oh, exactly. I mean, same thing we were talking about earlier. Wyatt Earp. He wasn't this tall, stalwart hero that never did anything wrong. He was a normal person who did whatever he could to make a living. At one point, he did decide to follow the law, and he did.
For money.
For money.
It was not for justice. He did it to make money. Because
Exactly.
the sheriff's also the tax collector.
Yes, and everything Wyatt Earp did his entire life was for money.
Now, how important do you think it is for historical accuracy in Westerns, especially when you're dealing with real life people? Or, I mean, I guess we can even call them characters, but in a movie that depicts Wild Bill Hickok, Billy the Kid, Wyatt Earp, how important is it that they stick to historical accuracy?
That's a good question. The thing is, with movies, they have to be entertaining, right? So we don't want to see a movie that has 3 hours of political shenanigans between the Earps and the Clantons and Behan and everyone else, and then suddenly has a gunfight that lasts, 30 seconds?
About
in the last 30 seconds. So we don't want to see a movie like that. So obviously you have to streamline it. That's really tough. I mean, I want historical accuracy because I'm really huge on history, but I don't want a really boring movie.
Now, why do you think we don't see more Westerns using historical characters in a purely fictional situation? Like The Patriot.
Well, I don't know. I really don't know. I think some people are afraid to use historical characters in fictional situations because they know people like us might come in and tear them apart and say, "Oh, that never happened. How can you say this?" But not to say Deadwood's the greatest Western TV show ever made, but I think it is. They did do that. Deadwood took historical characters and would keep to some of the history, but they would say, well, we want our narrative to go over here, so we're going to change it. And they did. And it works because you just accept it. You just say, well, I get it. Yeah, I'm sure Seth Bullock never had a relationship with Wild Bill Hickok because historically Seth Bullock showed up 2 days after Wild Bill Hickok died. But in the show, they show up and they have this really good paternal relationship. And it works for the show, the narrative of the show. And I'm okay with it. I think that's really where for movies, for me, if it just works for the story, I'm fine with it. If it's something you did for no reason, that makes no sense, such as in Wyatt Earp's Revenge, where they made up a huge story about Wyatt Earp having this love who gets killed, and it's not even Josephine, and it's not even Maddie. It's nobody. It's nobody ever historically connected to Wyatt Earp when you had this huge history you could have easily used, but they just made it up for shit's sakes. That's when I sit there and think, wow, you were handed a story and you threw it away.
That's got to be one of the reasons why Westerns nowadays have basically been relegated to straight to Blu-ray releases. Is they're just, what can we throw up against the wall and it sticks? And that's where I've seen most of the Westerns coming out lately, is just straight to Amazon, straight to Blu-ray. I kind of miss the days of just being able to say straight to home video. Because it doesn't really apply anymore, but
we still say that, don't we?
We do. I think we're definitely stuck in some of the older ways of describing things. But you've got, like, if you search Tombstone on iTunes, you get Tombstone, but then you get a straight to home video release with Danny Trejo called Dead in Tombstone.
Yes, I've seen that. I mean, I haven't watched it. I've seen the picture of it, and I've said, hell no.
And really, when you look back at the career of Val Kilmer, as great as the guy was, and as heartbreaking as it is to see him in movies today where he has to be voiced over, he's really done more Westerns than people understand. He's played Doc Holliday. He's played an old Wyatt Earp. He's played Billy the Kid.
Oh, God, did I miss that one? Which one did he play Billy the Kid?
Oh, yeah, that was really... That was like a late 80s I'm going to have to look that up to give you the specifics. But yeah, he played Billy the Kid in a very, very unhistorical film.
Jesus, Val.
But what are some of the movies, if you're trying to convince somebody to give Westerns a shot, what's a movie you're going to suggest to them?
Well, obviously, Tombstone. I mean, that's the first one that I think will grab somebody. It's got enough drama. It's got enough action. It's got, some people will say cheesy, but I mean, personally, I think most of the one-liners are pretty good in Tombstone. It's got everything you really need. Then, what's another one? Yeah, okay.
Would you suggest Unforgiven?
I would. I mean, Unforgiven it really was kind of the first. I mean, aside from the Dollars trilogy and what, Sergio Leone tried to do with his westerns, which I love, especially Once Upon a Time in the West. I believe I love that movie. Unforgiven was pretty much the first of its kind. This Western hero who tried, well, not hero. He was a bad guy, right? This very bad guy. He killed people. He was a drunk, and then he decided, I'm done with that life. And then, I mean, the only reason he goes back is for money.
Yeah.
And he knows it's bad, but he's good at it. And that's really the thing. He knows he's good at one thing. He wasn't good at being a farmer. He wasn't good at being a husband. He's probably not good at being a dad, which I think we kind of see that in the movie.
We definitely do.
Yeah, he's good at killing people. And
that's really all he's good at.
Yeah. Similar to Shane, honestly. It's similar to Shane. Shane, I think, was the only movie. I mean, I haven't seen every single movie between Shane and Unforgiven, but Shane's the same way. Shane knew he was only good at one thing, which was killing people. And he knew his time was over. And in Unforgiven, he knew his time was over, but he was good at killing folks.
So I did find the movie that Val Kilmer played Billy the Kid. And I'm kind of slapping myself for not remembering the name of the movie because the name is Billy the Kid.
Of course it is.
It was a TV movie in 1989.
No, Val, say it as a so.
So when you are looking at Val Kilmer's filmography, this comes after Real Genius, Top Gun, and Willow. This is his next credit after Willow.
What? So he really is, it's not just today. He was even back then willing to do anything.
Just about, yeah. And this cast, I'm kind of looking at this going, I remember seeing this movie, but I don't remember seeing any of these people in it. But I can never pronounce his name, but Rene Azerbaijan, Odo from Deep Space Nine.
Okay, yeah.
Is in this movie. Wilford Brimley plays Governor Lew Wallace.
Oh, I love that guy. You know, he's only in Westerns because of Robert Duvall.
How so?
He was best friends with Robert Duvall. He used to be, I think he just worked on shoeing horses on sets. And Robert Duvall said, hey, why don't you just be an extra or something? And Wilford said, oh, wow, I mean, I don't know. That's a lot of work, isn't it? And Robert Duvall said, no. You just sit on your horse and just do whatever you want. It's fine. And so Wilford Brimley started being in more and more Westerns.
So is it Robert Duvall's fault that he has diabetes?
Well, would you put it past Robert Duvall to force someone to eat several donuts?
No, not at all. And this is actually based on Gore Vidal's historical novel. And Gore Vidal has an uncredited cameo as a preacher in this TV movie.
What, Gore Vidal wrote a novel about Billy the Kid?
Yeah, I had no idea until I looked at this. The full title is Val Kilmer in Gore Vidal's Billy the Kid.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to watch this. Look
Yeah,
what you did to me.
I'm gonna search Amazon, see if I can find this. So, one thing about Westerns is that it can span other genres. It can be action. It can be a thriller. I would definitely say that something like Unforgiven is almost film noir with how dark and intense that it gets. It's almost a suspense film at times, especially with, you're wondering if Clint Eastwood's character is going to get away. But one thing that I think it is very successful in, comedy. What do you think about Blazing Saddles? Yeah, we got to jump in. Blazing Saddles. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I love Blazing Saddles. I mean, obviously, I'm sure we can all lament that a movie like that wouldn't be written today. But Blazing Saddles is great. I mean, I haven't watched it in forever, but I mean, it's great satire. It's great commentary on not just the era that they were portraying, but also the modern era that it was filmed in. So, I mean, you're right. And same with what Million Ways to Die in the West.
Oh yeah, we're definitely talking. That's another film I watched today, just to kind of get ready for a recording tonight. But Blazing Saddles, and especially Mel Brooks, this was in the 70s when his take on parodying was not only to parody something, but to make a quality addition to that genre. Where you've got Young Frankenstein, which feels like a Frankenstein movie. Blazing Saddles feels like a John Wayne Western.
It does, and it was filmed in some of the same places, wasn't it?
It was, and they almost had John Wayne in it.
Oh my God.
John Wayne was the first choice for Slim Pickens' character, the foreman. Wow. And John Wayne got the script and read it and told Mel Brooks, I cannot do this movie. They will not let me say this stuff. There's no way I can do it. But I laughed my ass off reading it. I will be there day one, and I will bring as many people as I can to see this movie. So they tried to keep it as Western as possible and get John Wayne. But yeah, can you imagine John Wayne riding in and saying, you guys are dancing around like a bunch of Kansas City f***s.
I mean, at least they got Slim Pickens, right?
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, John Wayne, my God. I mean, honestly, I would have loved to have seen him in that, but I also don't know how I'd feel about seeing John Wayne doing that. I mean, I get it. His on-screen persona was a myth. But I don't know if I'd be ready to see that myth destroyed.
Yeah, because he would be playing a villain. And did John Wayne ever play a villain?
Never. In fact, even in The Shootist, his final film, supposedly he was supposed to shoot one of the bad guys in the back, and he refused to do it and said, I've filmed 200 plus films, and I've never shot a man in the back, and I'm not going to do it now. Now, I think he had forgotten a few films because I'm pretty sure he did shoot a few folks in the back in some of his films.
Probably.
But that being said, he obviously had an image in his head that he would not tarnish.
Now, when you look at Blazing Saddles, like you said, there's no way it's going to be made today with the racial humor. They try to kind of excuse it by saying, well, Richard Pryor was a writer on that film. Richard Pryor wrote all of Mongo's scenes. Richard Pryor had nothing to do with the racial humor.
Well, if you got a black friend, you always have to say, oh, well, I've got a black friend. It's okay. I mean,
I'm not racist. My best friend's black.
Yeah. I mean, I live in New Hampshire, so they can't say that. But in Texas, people would say that.
We definitely heard that a few times. I'm not racist. I'm dating a black guy.
Yeah, because that excuses it.
Yeah. But Richard Pryor was actually up for the role of Bart. but because of his reputation, the studio would not sign off on him being the lead of this film. They could not trust him. And honestly, with the stories we've heard of Richard Pryor, you can't blame him.
No, not at all.
Now, have you ever seen Black Bart, the TV pilot based on Blazing Saddles?
I have not. I didn't even know it existed.
All right, so if you can get your hands on a special edition DVD or Blu-ray, it's a special feature on there. Louis Gossett Jr. plays Black Bart. There's like no carryover from Blazing Saddles other than the fact that it's a Mel Brooks production. And it definitely has a feel like Bonanza. They're continuing this thing of parodying something and making it feel like what it's parodying. And it's a Western TV show, so they make it feel like Bonanza. And I can definitely understand why it didn't get picked up. But part of me wants to live in that alternate universe where it did get picked up, and I just want to see what they would have done with this show. Well, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. They called it Black Bart.
Can Louis Gossett Jr. do comedy?
Oh, hell yes. Oh, yeah. His is more of a gruff, straight comedy and with a little bit of charm. Like, it opens with him not dressed like the sheriff, sweeping up outside of the jail, and this gun merchant comes in. Hey, boy, find me the sheriff. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He goes in and comes back out with this shit-eating grin on his face like, you wanted to talk to the sheriff, boy? So, Louis Gossett Jr. definitely, he has kind of a, I would almost say it's like an Idris Elba presence for humor.
Okay.
We've seen a little bit of Idris Elba do humor, but it's not him being goofy. It's just him playing it straight and having a little bit of charm with it. So that's what we got in Black Bart.
Wow, that could have been quite interesting.
But you mentioned it as kind of like the follow-up to Blazing Saddles, A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Yes.
What did you think of that?
I won't lie. When I first saw it, I didn't think it was that great. But that's because, for some weird reason, they put all the jokes in the trailers. So when I watched the movie, I wasn't, like, none of the jokes, I thought, oh, okay, there's Doc Brown. Well, I already saw him in the trailer. Oh, this joke was in the trailer. Okay, this joke was in the trailer. For some reason, it didn't really click with me. But about a year ago, it was in the $3 bin at Walmart. And my wife, Bella, she loves that film. So I said, well, screw it, let's buy it. So we bought it. And I watched it again, and we found ourselves laughing our asses off. So on second viewing, I thought it was great. And obviously accurate, because it's Seth MacFarlane, who's riffing essentially the whole movie on how horrible it was to live in the Old West.
Seth MacFarlane is basically playing a 21st century man living in the 1880s in the frontier in Arizona, which is where I am right now. And with how hot it is right now, and I live outside of Phoenix, so there's civilization here. I cannot imagine this area being a dust bowl and living out here. That would be hell. Now, when you got it, did you get the theatrical cut or the unrated cut where Seth MacFarlane got to cut loose?
That's a good question. I actually don't know. And we've already got it packed up right now, so I can't go look. But I want to think it was a theatrical cut because I don't remember seeing anything that stood out to me that I didn't see originally. Okay,
so the big trigger that will tell you which one you saw. Do you remember a scene where Seth MacFarlane's character is hitting on Kaylee Cuoco from Big Bang Theory?
No, she's in that movie?
Okay, so you watched the theatrical cut.
Okay.
So she's in a one little scene in the unrated cut right after he breaks up with his girlfriend, he runs into Kaylee Cuoco's character and is just kind of chatting her up and trying to, offer her gum. Yeah, it's the new big thing. You want to try it? And she starts reminding him, aren't you the guy that chickened out in the gunfight? And he goes, like, you're so popular. Well, I was elected homecoming queen in my school. Oh, how many people in your school? 5? No, 12. Oh, hell, that is big. So this is very much Seth MacFarlane's style. It's riffing. It's references. I mean, like you pointed out, Doc Brown. They got Christopher Lloyd to do Back to the Future 3 in just a quick throwaway Family Guy style scene, which I wish they didn't ruin in the trailers. I felt like that could have been an amazing shock in the theater.
I mean, that scene made me want to see the movie more because I thought they'd have more of that. But it turned out that was the big scene of, hey, here's a Family Guy type reference, and they threw it away in the trailer, like you said. And oh god, it's still good though. Again, watching it now after having not seen the movie for however long it's been, it definitely was better to watch. And now I thoroughly enjoyed the film now. So I think it'd be nice if we could get more comedy westerns. I just wonder if people are afraid to do those for some reason.
And it very well could be, because one thing that A Million Ways to Die in the West and Blazing Saddles has in common is that it's very hard R. It is rated R, raunchy humor. Is it possible to do a PG-13 style humor in the Old West?
I mean, yeah, you could do it. I mean, people do. I mean, they do all kinds of stupid comedy movies. Aren't most of scary movies PG-13, aside from the first one or two?
Yeah, but then again, that's where we're looking at the state of comedy today. Is that the scary movies are just churning out content for the sake of content. You've got Friedberg and Seltzer popping out epic movie and all these really crappy superhero movie, just pointless vampires suck style parodies. But now that I think about it, there was another Western comedy. Adam Sandler did one for Netflix.
Nope. I watched 5 minutes of that and turned it off.
Okay, now let me say, I'm not endorsing Adam Sandler. I have a list of people in this world that if I ever see them on the side of the road, I'm pretty certain I'm going to jail because I'm swerving off and hitting them. Adam Sandler's about number 1, number 2 on the list.
And he didn't used to be. That's the sad part.
He just hasn't cared. That's the thing. He just does movies to hang out with his buddies, get a paycheck for it, and possibly go on a cruise or some kind of vacation. And then he did was it called The Ridiculous Six?
Yes, that's what it's called.
And the only thing that I have seen from it is probably the same scene that everybody on Facebook has seen because it's constantly shared, is the scene where Taylor Lautner's character is being lynched, but for some reason he doesn't die. So he just starts swinging back and forth and laughing and woo, woo, and then they start trying to shoot him. And granted, I'm disappointed that Taylor Lautner didn't actually get hung, because he's definitely another actor that I think society would be better without.
Yes, please.
But that was another movie that I think it was PG-13. Where did they fail? Is it because Adam Sandler just doesn't care, or is it hard to do safe humor in a rough and gruff Old West situation?
Well, one, I didn't watch enough of Ridiculous Six to actually even know where they failed, because for me they failed immediately. It was so bad. I heard that Native American actors were walking off the set
Yes.
because it was so offensive. That's what I heard. I mean, I don't know if it's true.
Yes, that's been verified. It was filmed out in Santa Fe, so they had a good amount of Native American actors in the area.
Oh my god.
They spent $60 million on this film.
Oh, excuse me.
You good?
Oh, that's horrible. See, that's how bad this movie is.
Adam Sandler made Jack choke.
Yep, and not the way you think. So I think the differences between comedy westerns is I think you have to be clever, and the problem is when people write, especially comedies nowadays, and especially westerns, they don't want to be clever. They want to take the cheap shots that you can always take at westerns. So then you get movies like Almost Heroes, which was Chris Farley's final film, which was kind of a western. It was set during the like Lewis and Clark era,
yeah.
But I could say it was still kind of a western. Or didn't John Candy do a really crappy western as his last
Wagons
film as well?
East?
Yeah.
Oh, what is it about crappy westerns being like the final film that you do?
Yeah, I mean, they take cheap shots, and it's easy to take cheap shots for any comedy, but westerns you have to be clever, which Seth MacFarlane was. He took cheap shots because of Seth MacFarlane, but he's also a clever writer, so he made it funny because, I think didn't one guy get attacked by a bear? God, I can't remember. They were at the town fair, and it just happened, and he was like, look, see, that's what happens.
Oh, Buffalo just bull charged through and took out... And it was a bull. Bull charged through out of nowhere and took out Principal Belding from Saved by the Bell.
Yes, Principal Belding. Oh, God, Principal Belding. I saw him in a Las Vegas club, actually. Not kidding. He was there as a celebrity guest. So the DJ had him come up, and he said, this is Principal Belding, everyone. I just want to let you know, school is out. And then the whole club got crazy, and everyone cheered. And God knows how much he got paid just to do that. But yeah, I saw Principal Belding.
The fact that he was called a celebrity is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, it was at a club called Pure in the Caesar's Palace. It was horrible. You had to pay. You had to pay to even have a seat, so none of the tables had seats. It was horrible. Yeah, Principal Belding.
Well, and this just goes to show how much research I did not do before all this. I did a little bit just to talk about, this is a good movie, this is a good movie, but forgot about Western comedies, and one that was family-friendly and successful. Shanghai Noon.
Okay, yes, I love that movie.
It's Jackie Chan. I mean, that guy, you can put him in just about anything, and even if the movie sucks, you're going to like Jackie Chan. And you got Owen Wilson playing Owen Wilson, who we find out his real name...
That's a horrible cowboy name.
Yeah, and then his real name is Wyatt Earp, which kind of hurts. But overall, it was fun. And they played with the tropes of the Sergio Leone villain wearing all black with the pencil mustache. And they had fun with it. They were able to portray the violence of the Old West and keep it family friendly.
That's right. That's one I often forget about because it's just one of those, what was that, late 90s, early 2000s?
2000. It was 2000 exactly.
Okay. Yeah, it gets lost, I think, in all those superhero movies that started coming out around 2000. But you're right. I love that movie. And there's a whole reference about Texans. He's like, oh, why didn't you tell me he was a Texan? Those guys are crazy.
And that was Walt Goggins, who is a wildly unappreciated actor. He does bit parts and everything. The biggest thing I think he did was like The Shield, but everything he does, he's just a lot of fun. So we can start kind of wrapping towards the end here. I wanted to hear from you just simple question. Favorite Westerns? We talked about Tombstone, but what are just some of your favorite Westerns that you love watching?
All right. Well, that's a long list. Obviously, Tombstone, godfather of all Westerns. So there's a recent Western that came out, The Ballad of Lefty Brown. And it did make a big splash. I think it's more of an indie Western. I watched it on Amazon Prime. It's got Bill Pullman, but it essentially toys with the idea of what happens if the John Wayne character dies, right? And then Stumpy, his sidekick from Rio Bravo, has to be the hero. And it plays with that. So Bill Pullman is Lefty Brown, who's the sidekick to Peter Fonda. And Peter Fonda gets killed, and there's whole big political reasons. And Lefty Brown gets charged. Everyone says Lefty Brown killed Peter Fonda, who was essentially his best friend and his mentor for 20 plus years.
I'm looking at the cast on this. I'm going to have to watch this now.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. It's filmed entirely in Montana. They filmed it in Bannock, Montana, which is an old ghost town that they've now turned into like a more of a tourist thing. They had a lot of local extras, but it is a heart-wrenching film because not only does Bill Pullman portray this character who the whole film you can see him in his head thinking, God, I wish my friend was here. God, I wish my friend was here. He'd know what to do. How would he handle this? And he's trying to be someone that he's never had to be before. And you, as you're watching this, and your heart's being wrenched out because all you can think of is, God, don't let anything bad happen to him. God, don't let anything bad happen to him. And it's a great movie. And I don't think I've seen Bill Pullman do such a good acting job in his career, aside from President in Independence Day 4, because, I would vote for that guy.
Oh, come on. Spaceballs was the best acting Bill Pullman ever did.
That's true. So yeah, Ballad of Lefty Brown. That was great. When it comes to John Wayne, I'm a sucker for Rio Bravo, which was the original version of Rio Lobo.
Yeah. John Wayne remaking his own films decades before remakes were popular.
Right, with the same director. It blows my mind. Howard Hawks just said, I don't feel like trying for the next 2 decades. Let's just remake the same film.
Well, that was back in the day where there was no home video. So you saw the movie in the theater, and once it was out, good luck seeing it again.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. I don't think about that sometimes. So I love Rio Bravo. It's got all the elements. It's got the little political elements as well. It was the answer to High Noon, as we all know. I'm a fan of John Ford's The Iron Horse, which is one of his early silent films. But not only is it just a gorgeous film, he used real people in the film that actually were working on the railroads when the railroads were built. He has Chinese immigrants there that actually worked on the railroad, and it's stuff like that blows my mind about the early westerns. Is having they still had a touch of the real western. And you know what, the Lone Ranger with Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp.
I was about to say, are we talking about the recent Lone Ranger?
We are, and as controversial as that is. I think when it originally came out, we had Depp overload because that was right when the Pirates movies were out. And I think it wasn't given a fair shake. The film is too long. I will say that. And I think that's part of it. But overall, it is a gorgeous film. It's not unlike any old school Western that people love. They film Monument Valley and say it's Texas. How many times has that happened in the past? Everyone comes to Texas expecting Monument Valley. News fact, it's not here. It's nowhere near here. Or, well, I'm in New Hampshire, so it's definitely nowhere near here. But,
nowhere near where I am.
Yeah.
Our friendship started in Texas, so we tend to think in Texas terms.
Yes. So I love that film, as controversial as that is. And then when it comes to TV shows, obviously Deadwood, Hell on Wheels, and the other go-to Western that everybody loves, Lonesome Dove.
Yeah, Lonesome Dove seems to be a great go-to If you want to kind of give somebody something that they can ease into, you don't have to sit for a 2.5 hour film or 3.5 hour if you really want them to see Wyatt Earp. I think it's like about 3.5 hours. I remember they came out with that was back in the day that when they released it for home video, VHS, that far back, it was a double tape release. You had to have two tapes to see the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's one of those, even the history behind that is great. Apparently, John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart were originally tagged to play Gus and Call, and then they passed on it, and then, 10 years went by, and then you got Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall, who the author to this day says their parts should have been switched, which blows my mind. I don't see how Robert Duvall could play Call. He was obviously Gus, but so that's my quick list of great westerns. How about you?
And see, that's the thing. When it comes to westerns, right off, I'm right there with you. Tombstone, that tops my list. It is one of my favorite films of all time. I was actually at Old Tucson Studios when they were filming it. We had no idea the level of cast that we were feet from, but they had part of the area roped off, and it said currently filming Tombstone. And my dad and I were like, okay, we got to keep an eye out. Who's in this cast? And then we're at a theater. This is when we lived in Tucson, and we see the trailer, and it's Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, and my dad and I look at each other and go, shit! Oh, we could have met them if we just jumped the line and ran past security. But like I said, Real Lobo, that one, I fully admit, it's not the best John Wayne movie, but because I watched it a lot as a kid with my dad, there's a sentimental value to it. So I enjoy the hell out of it, and thankfully it's on like Amazon Prime in a special widescreen director's cut release. So it's definitely something that I can put on whenever I want to watch. Young Guns. Loved Young Guns as a kid. I'm right there with you. Young Guns 2, for its historical inaccuracies, I still enjoy the hell out of it. I think it is just so much fun. Beyond that, we've kind of talked about it. Blazing Saddles, A Million Ways to Die in the West. I can watch and really enjoy parts of The Quick and the Dead. But there's just something about that movie that doesn't resonate with me, but I'll always suggest it to people to watch.
Now, are you talking the original with Sam Elliott, or are you talking the one with Kurt Russell? No, Master and Commander guy.
Oh, I'm talking
Russell Crowe.
With Russell Crowe, young Leonardo DiCaprio, Gene Hackman, and Sharon Stone.
Am I wrong? Wasn't that Sam Raimi's first American film?
No, Sam Raimi had done the Evil Dead films long before Quick and the Dead came out.
Okay. But that was one of his early ones, wasn't it?
You know what? I really wish that we lived in a day and age where I had like a little mini computer that I could.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Quick and the Dead came out in 95, and it really has just a great cast. It's got Keith David, Pat Hingle, which people won't recognize the name, but we recognize him as the original theatrical Commissioner Gordon. He played Commissioner Gordon in the Batman films from Keaton on.
That very incompetent Commissioner Gordon, by the way. God,
the worst Commissioner Gordon by far, but we love him. Even has Tobin Bell, who went on to get fame as Jigsaw in the Saw films. So, yeah, this came out in 95, so Raimi definitely had all of the Evil Dead films under his belt. This was around the time he also started working as an executive producer on Xena. So he definitely kind of made his bones. So this was nothing new for him. But it is kind of on the lower end of his career as a director. It's nothing like the Spider-Man films. It's nothing like the Evil Dead films. And I couldn't even, if you put a gun to my head and said, why don't you absolutely love this film? I couldn't tell you. I enjoy it, but there's just parts that almost make me uncomfortable.
I can agree, and I think part of it is he did have those Evil Dead moments where he would zoom the camera in or have a certain shot that was hard to take serious. If I recall, I've watched it one or two times. I actually own it, but I think I recall this. What you're talking about is it was a very serious film, but then it would suddenly do something that I thought, well, that seemed campy. Why was that? It was odd. There was just odd stuff in it, I think.
Yeah. And the whole thing of the Sharon Stone's character when she was a young girl was forced to try to shoot her father down from being hanged and ends up killing him, and that's what she has to live with through her life. I'm like, even for a Western, that's some dark shit.
Well, you know what's interesting about that film, and I do have to wonder. So she insisted on Leonardo DiCaprio being in the film. And then when they said they didn't want him to be in it, she said, fine, I'll pay for him to be in it. And apparently she bankrolled his entire salary for the film. Now I have to wonder what was going on there.
Yeah. Leonardo DiCaprio in 95, I think he had What's Eating Gilbert Grape under his belt, which is probably one of the most infamous mentally handicapped performances of all time.
Yeah.
But what did he do prior to... Okay, well, he did some TV shows. Oh, I know. She was a big fan of Critters 3. But
okay.
In all honesty, he did the Basketball Diaries the same year. Yeah. It could have been that. And then the following year, he did Romeo and Juliet. So he was definitely on an upswing, but...
Oh, yeah.
Agreed. What the hell about 94? Because they would have filmed it in 94 at this point. What about 94? Leo DiCaprio made her go, he's such a good actor. I need to pay for him to be in this movie. Or is it, I need a boy toy?
Yeah, well, maybe that's why he sticks with a certain age group now.
Oh, and this is Sharon Stone in 94, so who can blame him? But let's go ahead and wrap this up for tonight. I do want to thank you so much for, we've been talking about this for a couple years and finally got a chance to pull this off. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. And man, I got to shoot the shit about Westerns with my best friend. Good night.
Hell yeah.
All right, so I want to thank everybody for listening, and as a matter of fact, Jack's going to be back. We've already talked about, we're going to discuss, I think, the movie franchise that we first found out we both liked when we became friends 20 years ago. Ninja
Turtles?
Oh, yeah. So we're talking all about Ninja Turtles and Star Trek when we come back. But no, it's serious.
Okay.
When Jack's not dropping his windshield on his microphone there, at some point, I don't know if it's going to be the next episode or the following, we're going to be talking about the Highlander franchise. So that's going to be a fun one. So
there
again,
could be only one.
And really, when you look at it, there was only one good movie. So I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
It appears as though we must redefine the nature of our association.